predictable, right? I mean, Brazil was playing Croatia. Did I tell you I have a thing for Croatia because they almost, when I say they, this summer program almost sent me to Croatia, and it was like in the 70s to do a foreign exchange or student time away from America, go spend time with the Croats. And they asked, "Do you know any Croatian?" I said, "No, I've been studying French." And it's really too bad. We continue to Croatia. They have great beaches. And I almost said, "Yeah, I'm going," but I'm not a beach guy. I'm not a beach guy. And so eh, this was a time when it was still, I wish in some ways I had gone to Croatia instead of France because I would have had a real link to that whole area. That Serbo-Croatian, that whole Balkan thing. I would have been rooted and I would have understood it from the Croatian side, not necessarily from the Serbian side. But just think of all the things that have happened there since the 70s. And I could have said, hey, I have my Croatian experience. And so today it was, I guess I was rooting for the Croatians. I really was, over Brazil, the overdogs. And when Brazil scored 1-0 deep into the game, I thought that's it. That's it. It's not, game's over. Actually, it was like I think that was the first half. They scored early. And then Croatia came back and they tied it. I went away thinking the Brazilians had won it. And then I came back and the Croatians had tied it up 1-1. And then there was a shootout. And oh my God, the Croatians prevailed in the shootout. This is like a major upset. I only point out this story so that if you are an underdog, if you are fighting an overdog, the Brazil-Croatia match is the match to think about. So that's the World Cup. That's how funny, how odd World Cup soccer is. And then the other thing, then the next game was equally, I don't know how it's ended or how it will end, but the Argentinians were playing Netherlands, and it looked like it was all Argentina. 1-0, 2-0. In the 83rd minute, Netherlands scored, so it was 2-1. I thought, Argentina has this in the bag. I went away. I came back. They tied it up. 2-2. And now in the extra time, and there was 10 minutes of extra time. So there must have been some good acting. People like, oh, my aching foot. Oh, he tripped me. Of course, they'd be saying this in Spanish or in Dutch. 10 minutes of extra time. So now I believe as I talk, they're playing in the overtime period. And who knows? I'd like to see this end in a shootout because my theory about shootouts is that is the essence of soccer. Goalie, ball handler, they shoot the ball, you get it by the goalie, you score. That is the game, right? When you're a small kid and you're playing in the park, that's what they did. They set up jackets as goalposts. You got one guy in the goal, got one guy with the ball, and he either kicks it as a penalty kick or he tries to go, you go one-on-one with no goalie. The goalie comes out of the box and tries. That's soccer. That's how I grew up playing soccer in the Mission District. And so it seems like that's the micro version of the game suitable for settling ties, settling real long, drawn out games. Here's the shootout. Some people hate them. I like them. Brazil, Croatia, shootout, goes to Croatia. The favorites are out. Now, Argentina and the Netherlands playing. Maybe it ends in a shootout. Let's see. That's the World Cup. The United States isn't in it, so I'm not torn one way or the other. I would have liked to have seen the U.S., but if the U.S. was in there instead of the Netherlands, the U.S., I'll tell you, would have been killed. They would have been killed by Argentina. I think. I just don't think the U.S. could have given the Argentines the same kind of game. Anyway, welcome to Emil, Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. This program, this is show 445. I call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Actually, put in your ethnicity. It's my naming convention for Asian American. So I'm an Asian American Filipino, an AAF, Asian American Chinese, an AACH, because the Asian American Cambodians would be the AACs, the Asian American Chinese. Anyway, this is our micro talk show. I talk about things that are important to us, but if you're neither Asian or American, well, certainly you're American. But maybe you're not an AAX, but you're an ALL. All the rest of it, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live on Twitter, on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, on Twitter at Emil Amok, on Facebook at facebook.com/emilguillermo.media. And later we put it all up on my website at amok.com. So coming up today, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales will join me. We'll talk about the news. We'll talk about Kyrsten Sinema. What the heck is she doing? I mean, can't we enjoy the victory of Georgia? We can't enjoy the victory of Georgia because Kyrsten Sinema wants it to be all about Kyrsten Sinema. So we'll talk to Professor Dan a bit about that. We'll talk about Trump news, the same-sex law that was passed and is awaiting signature by Biden. It cleared all the congressional hurdles. It's also same-sex interracial marriage. We'll talk about Pearl Harbor Day. Hardly anyone talked about it. And since Dan is a professor of Asian American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State, he knows something. He knows something about that. And so all that we'll talk to Dan about. But I want to begin by something that I saw in the news. California is the largest Asian American AAPI state in the country, right? I mean, it is the AAPI state in the country. So you have to be alarmed when the LA County Commission on Human Relations puts out a study. This week they put out a study. They reported that 786 victims of hate crimes since this is hate crimes surge in LA County in 2021, the highest level since 2002, a 23% increase over 2020. That's a lot. 786 victims of hate crimes. The crimes overwhelmingly included acts of violence, and more than half were spurred by racism. Blacks, Latinos, Jews, LGBTQ individuals among the most targeted groups, but also Asian Americans. 49 hate crime cases were referred to the district attorney's office in 2021. They filed charges in 42. Of the adults prosecuted, 31 were charged with felonies and 9 with misdemeanors. The executive director of the Human Relations Commission in LA County said, "We really feel it's necessary to not hide the ugly reality of hate violence in our communities, which is what these findings and numbers represent." And so we see this happening in LA. You put it against a backdrop of the Buffalo shooting, the massacre of shoppers in Buffalo at the grocery store there, the recent LGBTQ nightclub shooting in Colorado Springs. And you see why in LA County, Supervisor Janice Hahn is saying that the country is in the throes of a hate crisis, and the numbers in LA County bear that out, that in LA County, it's pretty severe. So the county also recorded 77 anti-Asian hate crimes, the most in at least 2 decades. I mean, we're talking about serious stuff. Asian Americans have seen a surge in violent attacks, being scapegoated for the spread of COVID-19. Of course, that scapegoating was led by the chief scapegoater, the scapegoater in chief, the former president, number 45, scapegoater Donald J. Trump. According to this LA Times report, in almost a quarter of the incidents in LA County, the perpetrator of the attack blamed the victim for the pandemic. A quarter of the incidents, so 77. So that's 25%. All right. Say like 16, 17. That's still pretty high. 20. I mean, so you got Asian hate, you got LGBTQ hate, you got hate against blacks, hate against Jews. This is happening in LA, and you see what's going on with the anti-Semitic remarks, why people should be more incensed by the comments of Kanye West. This is where we are in the largest state in the union for Asian Americans. Overall, hate crimes up in LA County, and for Asian Americans, hate crimes definitely up. Just something that may not have been in our consciousness because we've been focused on all these other big things, like, we'll talk about Brittany Griner's release. We'll talk about more about Georgia. But what got my attention here is I would have missed this story, but I saw something on CNN. They were reporting about Orange County. And in Orange County, they passed an ordinance that proclaimed that racism is a public health crisis in Orange County. Now, Orange County is not considered one of those places where they do these kind of wokey things, right? It's predominantly white, predominantly conservative, but you have more Democrats on the Board of Supervisors. I think it's more like I think it's a majority now. And the leader who fought for this ordinance was a supervisor named Andrew Do, a Vietnamese American and a conservative. Can you imagine this? A woke conservative who is sensitive to race. And he talked to CNN. He said he's experienced personally racism in many forms. He first came over here. He said it was extreme. Now, lately, he says it's more subtle. But he says he believes that with this resolution, they're trying to promote understanding to see how they can fight racism in Orange County, which is just adjacent to LA County. They're going to support diversity. But I think it's important that he acknowledges this and that everyone else acknowledges it in Orange County, because it's too easy to say, no, there's no racism. That's why it's important that this law comes out, because it's too easy to say, oh, no, there's no racism here. Oh, you're overreacting. Oh, yeah. No, it's real. I mean, how many times, even with the pandemic scapegoating, and then it really came to a head with the killings of the Korean women in Atlanta. And even then people were saying, oh, no, it's in your head. You're seeing things. It's not real. It's real. Here's the data. People see the data. And even when you have data, they'll say, oh, no, that doesn't count. Oh, it's got to be like a death. Oh, it's got to be like a crime. Oh, that was like a mini transgression. It all counts. But the ones that are in this LA County thing, these are real crimes where they actually prosecuted people, hate crimes. And it's real crimes where people said, hey, the perp said they did it toward Asians because of the pandemic. They're blaming Asians on the pandemic. So I just don't want people to say, oh, come on, this is not real. There is no hate in America. There is hate in America. So I was surprised that CNN had assigned a reporter to cover this and talk to Andrew Doe. I was happy to see that. And then they showed a clip of another Asian American health official there thanking Andrew Doe for passing this resolution acknowledging that racism is a public health issue in Orange County. And then as the man was sitting down, and I believe he was not Chinese, but people in the audience said, "Go back to China. Go back home. Go back where you come from." And Andrew Doe was pretty clever. He said, "Really? Go back to China? And you think racism is dead? Really? Okay, all right." So irony is a concept that's foreign to some of us. That's Andrew Doe, supervisor. Good comeback. It's a truth. We should beware. Orange County passes this ordinance that says, because of hate crimes, racism is a mental health issue. LA County, same week that LA County comes out with its report that says hate crimes reach highest level in nearly 2 decades. And this isn't just Asians, it's all across: blacks, Latinos, Jews, LGBTQ. We got to be mindful of this. They're talking about 786 victims, a 23% increase over 2020. This is a big deal in one of the more diverse states in the country, certainly the most Asian state. Got to be paying attention to this. We can't let it go. So I also want to point out that the ordinance that says racism is a mental health issue, Orange County, same Orange County that elected Michelle Steele, the Korean American woman. She's Korean American, goes by her married name. And she launched the most vicious racist attack on Jay Chen, the Democrat. Michelle Steele's a Republican. She charged Jay Chen with being a communist. Jay Chen, American born, Taiwanese American, served in the Navy, a lieutenant, I believe a lieutenant colonel in the Navy, an intelligence officer in the Navy, a vet. She's claiming that he was a communist sympathizer and using that because she knew that sort of thing played with the Vietnamese Americans that she was appealing to in her Orange County district in Little Saigon. So to me, that was a hate crime too. And Michelle Steele won by a relatively slim margin. But she won. She defeated Jay Chen. But she used racism. Just want to point that out as we end. I guess we're sort of ending the midterm cycle. And really, we haven't even had time to really gloat and just feel good about it. Because yesterday, apparently, Kristen Sinema said she's going to switch to an I. She's going to be independent. Let's bring up Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales, College of Ethnic Studies, my friend, Asian American Studies professor, political professor, Dan Gonzales, San Francisco State University. Hi, Dan.
Hi, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
hey, look,
depressing. It's depressing to have to recognize, to be forced to recognize that Michelle Steele, who had incumbency on her side,
yeah,
used those kinds of racist tactics and also political smear campaigns that have been used characteristically by what we call the extreme right in the Republican Party, particularly.
Yeah.
So it's red baiting inside the Asian American community, and it's really quite easy to do that because virtually all of the Asian American communities are sensitive to allegations of socialism or communism
Yeah.
because
Well,
of their
yeah,
history in Asia.
they're escaping it. What's the biggest fear, right? The biggest fear of Asian Americans who immigrated and like if you came on a boat from Vietnam, I mean, someone says, "Oh, these guys are communist sympathizers." Oh, the kiss of death, right? I mean, you're not gonna vote for that person. So I just think I called it when it was happening. I called it Asian on Asian hate, but it really did catapult Michelle Steele uh,
Yeah.
to the victory in California 45. And then what did you think about the hate crime stats? I mean, those hate crimes. I mean, I didn't realize the hate crime stats were that high in Southern California because of all the news that came out. That news was really not played up that high. That highly in this week.
Well,
I
all of the counties that surround Los Angeles County itself
mm,
have long histories. One of racism, okay, and racism towards virtually all people of color.
right.
And historically, the largest populations there were actually Mexican and Latino before the arrival of African Americans and in substantial numbers, and Asians. Then, because of the concentration of African Americans, particularly in Los Angeles County, and their presence in some of the rural districts, right, in to the east of L.A. and San Diego, there's a long history there
Mm.
of racism against blacks. So this is not new to me. Orange County also, up until very recently, was very white,
Oh
and
yeah.
the group that's come in fairly recently, once again, in about the last 30 years, generation and a half, has been Asian groups, um, and particularly Chinese Vietnamese in substantial numbers, sort of like what's happened in Santa Clara County here in
Mhm.
Northern California.
Right.
So there was a concentration of Chinese that moved out to Monterey Park, and they started running for office successfully in Monterey Park. And the reaction to that was a lot of local policy and legislation, right? County and city legislation that was markedly anti-Chinese.
Mm.
Because even down to what kind of signs you can post, they passed legislation that outlawed Chinese writing, you know,
Uh,
for Chinese businesses,
so this
and
is just a new generation of this
yes,
and
this is just the current iteration. That's correct.
yeah, a current iteration, new generation, and but it's surprising we don't learn from this, and maybe because we don't
Well,
want
it
to.
depends on who you want to learn.
Yeah,
The folks that are practicing racism don't want to learn. They
right, right.
practice racism because they want to retain what they perceive to be power. That they have a sense of power. And the reason I say sense of power is the reality is, as of 35 years ago, I was already talking about the fact that they were losing power. They were
Mm,
losing, and it wasn't. It's there's apparent power, okay, and there's the exercise of power in reality. And for most of American society and American history, right,
mm,
apparent and reality power has been in the hands of white people, generically. Okay, generically. What has happened over the last almost three generations now is uh, ethnic groups both because of law, politics, the courts, have, and just the reality of competition in the workforce, right?
Yeah.
Have gained position, and that means, if you gain position in jobs,
Uh,
you gain position in unions, you gain political power, and that's been going on quietly. What has happened most recently over the past 20 years is Asian Americans have been running for office and succeeding. Okay. And so,
right.
just as Mr. Obama's success was likely to provoke extreme racist reaction, which we saw from the so called Tea Party uh, initially, right? And now lasting racism from the right wingers, and not just the extremists in the Republican. I would say, the Republican Party as a whole, and I do not take pleasure in saying that.
Yeah.
There are different forms of racism. There's outright racism, and with physical outcomes, violence that we're talking about now. Okay, and then there's the more subtle forms of racism, where people act quietly, where people do things to organize. Once again, quietly. Sometimes it happens on a very local basis in the workplace.
Yeah.
And there are really a lot of subtle forms of that. I
Re-
faced racism, what I believe to be racism, at San Francisco State, which has a reputation for not only being progressive, but being beyond progressive in terms of its student population, being downright radical at times. And
Yeah.
I have been the target of subtle forms of racism. And
Well,
I do not mean that it was that I all I mean is that it was unstated, that it's not something that you could call racism outright, but the behavior that I was subjected to, clearly, in my opinion, was grounded in, at the very least, a lack of respect for the College of Ethnic Studies, where I'm from, and for Asian American Studies, maybe not particularly, but because it's a form of ethnic studies.
yeah. And, this is the thing that Supervisor Andrew Doe of Orange County said when he introduced this ordinance declaring that racism was a public health issue in Orange County. He said he's experienced racism himself. It was subtle. And then just as he's passing this ordinance, you have people yelling out, go back home, go to China. And like
Right.
as if they
Yeah.
don't realize that that is a both a subtle and not so subtle form of racism. They don't see it as racism. I see it as free speech or whatever. I don't know. They
Yeah,
can't
that's true.
they can't see the irony of that. And yet that really is one of the things that we could
No, they
talk about.
don't want to see it. It's not that they can't, they won't. They do not identify those kinds of actions as racism. They
Yeah.
identify them as rational actions based on fact. Okay, that we are immigrant communities. It's true, right? For I can speak for my own community. Over 60% of the Filipino American community is first generation immigrant.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's even greater in the Vietnamese community, all out just like it does in the Chinese American community. But the largest Asian immigrant groups are still the Chinese and Filipino, not by much. We're about to be eclipsed by South Asians.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
so many like a generation ago when we were coming up, the Filipinos were after the Chinese. It was the Filipino. The Filipinos were actually close to the Chinese, and then somehow I guess our Catholicism didn't kick in. We didn't, or actually, it was probably more immigration. It was actually more that the immigration stopped. The immigration flow was lagging.
yeah, well, it wasn't the rhythm method because we know,
Yeah, well,
it's,
Catholicism that's shocked me that we couldn't keep up or make up for it that way. All right, so I there was something I want to talk about more about Kirsten Cinema, but there was something that came up in the Supreme Court, and this is sort of the the significance of having a congressional majority in, with the 51st senator, uh, being Reverend Warnock in Georgia. Because if you the Senate or the Congress having congressional control in the Senate helps you to put a check on whatever they do in the court. And the court heard one or two. They heard two cases, but I want to talk about this one about the Creative 303 Creative, which is a website, uh, you know, developer. They refused to do a website for an LGBTQ wedding. And they said it was against their First Amendment rights. They didn't believe in the same sex marriage. I bring it up because the ACLU has said if this website developer wins the case at the Supreme Court level, we will be in a world where we can pick and choose how discriminatory we want to be. We can say, we don't serve blacks, we don't serve women, we don't serve Filipinos, we don't serve gay or LGBTQ. I mean, that was the ACLU's interpretation. Did you see it that way?
Yes, I do. I do. I don't agree with everything the ACLU does uh, to the same extent, right? But in this instance, I do agree with their perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and again, it's people who say um, that I'm not discriminating, right? I mean that really is it's kind of a weird argument, right? Because it's a defensive argument.
yeah,
I have First Amendment rights, but this goes beyond the First Amendment. Okay, behavior and exclusion goes beyond the First Amendment. It brings in the issue of equal protection in the 14th Amendment. And so this turns towards being a defensive action, in my opinion,
yeah,
by their asserting that I'm not discriminating, right?
yeah, yeah. What surprised me was the ACLU disagreed with the wedding cake, the anti-LGBTQ website developer. Not the wedding cake was a different story. That was just
Mhm.
cakes. That didn't the Supreme Court just didn't want to rule on the free speech issue yet. They just said, "Oh, it was cakes. You got to serve them, right? Because that's public accommodations." But where I kind of was wondering about the ACLU is that the ACLU ordinarily would defend the most odious perspectives out there. So they would protect the right of Nazis,
Yes, to
their
march.
right to march.
Yeah, to talk, do speech
Yeah.
and press. Yes.
Yeah, they would protect that. But here they say, I guess this is the line, huh? This is where the line is drawn between allowing Nazis to march and allowing a website developer to say they're not serving LGBTQ.
Yeah, the ACLU and others they're zealous in protection of free speech, uh, but it starts to that zealousness is reduced when people start actually acting on their beliefs and on their statements. So it's the same thing with guns, pro gun speech, right? You can say if I were, and hold the gun over your head and said, if I were to take up arms now, I would take them up against the police, okay, or some other governmental entity. And as long as the word "if" is in there, okay, even the action of holding a gun over your head and demonstrating a potential capacity, right, is permissible. Okay, it is permissible. That is the law as it is now. Here we have somebody who only wants to do a service, regardless of what it is. In this instance, it's making a cake, right?
No,
Um,
no, this is
wedding
the
cake, yeah.
website. This is the website.
Oh, okay, the website. Oh, that's right. Designs websites,
Yeah.
and expanding into the wedding market. That's right. It wasn't a cake; it was a website. The
The previous case, or the previous case was a cake
Yeah, that was
case.
a cake case. Yeah, in this instance, First Amendment rights are being argued, and really, this is again, it's an action, okay,
Mhm.
or an omission. It's one of those two.
So
So ACLU is doing what it usually does, which is if the people are going to act on something, okay, that should be subject to strict scrutiny. That would be the standard that would be applied in this instance. And now, the thing that makes it difficult is it's not as threatening as somebody holding a gun over their head
right,
and the word if. Okay.
It-
In this
yeah,
instance, the person is saying it's against my religious beliefs, right? That's really a common
yeah,
argument. And it have to be against religious beliefs. Okay. It can be just personal beliefs. But when you cloak it with religiosity, uh, it has a greater degree of strength, right?
yeah,
It has a
and
greater degree of
well,
strength.
and the strength does have, I mean, is respected by a conservative court that goes out of its way for religious rights issues, which is why it's strange that you hear what the ACLU
Right.
says, and yet you hear a kind of a willingness on the part of some of the conservative justices to allow this wedding or this website designer uh, to have her way somewhat. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's that there seems to be more than just a little passageway where this, her position wins. And we wouldn't have had that with if we didn't have such a conservative court. But they are so conservative, especially on religious issues, that they might consider this. And then we would have this, hey, it's okay to have legal discrimination in America. It's okay to hold up a sign and say we don't serve LGBTQ.
Yeah. Um, I think it'd be interesting. That's a good idea, actually. That
To what?
if they're going to discriminate,
Mm.
maybe the court should say you should put out a sign that you will not serve certain people.
And that, and by that you make it public,
Yeah.
and what? And then
Well, people can make a choice as to whether or not they want to use the services of that
in
website
general, yeah,
creator.
in general, whether or not you are LGBTQ or not, you can say, "Hey, I believe in equality. I believe in fairness. I don't want to support that business that won't serve LGBTQ people."
Yeah, if you really wanted, if the court really wanted to balance rights, okay, then and they're going to make a decision in favor of the website creator. Okay,
Mhm.
they should also protect the rights and interests of the general public
Yeah,
to choose to not use that business's services.
right. So make it fully transparent. If you are
Yep.
going to be uh, racist, sexist, whatever, homophobic, if you want to be if you want to have legal discrimination, you need to have full transparency. And let's see how long you last in the land of the free, I
Yeah,
guess.
even if they could state it in positive terms. They could state we only serve heterosexual couples,
Ah,
right? They could do that instead of saying we do not serve
yeah,
same-sex couples. You know?
yeah. But then the other side would say, "Oh, we know it. We know what you're really saying," and
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
it'll be up to the marketplace en masse to make a decision and say, you know what, that is a bad choice for your business, and we are not going to frequent you. We're not going to patronize you.
yep,
I mean,
right.
because right now it's kind of like, uh, business is business, and your own personal business is your own personal business. Keep it to yourself. Or
Yeah, well, how many people are going to pay attention? My point is how many people are going to have actually pay attention to these court cases. We've learned through the Trump era and I guess tail end of the Trump era is still with us.
Yeah.
Um, we've learned that people don't watch the news. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're being very selective about where they get their information. If they indeed look for quote news, if they look for journalistic accounts of what the hell is going on in society, you know.
Right. Well, that's why you can't really truly have a the kind of old fashioned news talk radio where you hear, because it used to be that news was pretty universal. You'd get it, and now it's only the biggest stories are told everywhere, and usually in the right way. But now there are stories that you will only see on a Fox or only
That's
see on
right.
CNN or only see on an MSNBC. Or, like I said, I didn't see this LA County hate crimes thing reported anywhere except in the LA Times, but it should have been something that should have been more national. Major city, United States, hate crimes up, big deal, but
Right.
get reported. So this is the thing. We live in a state of ignorance, and we bring up
Yeah.
these things
Yeah. It's
to
actually
try to
worse.
inform. And
It's actually worse than ignorance. People choose to be misinformed. They choose to be
yeah,
misinformed. They choose to be afactual. They're not only denying facts; they're looking for non-facts that bolster or affirm their own perceptions and beliefs.
right. Just give me the right
Their own
excuse. Give me the right excuse. Give me the right language. Give me give me the right backstory. Give me the right response so I can get my
sure,
woke friends off my tail or something. Right. I mean, that's
right.
yeah, and that's why they watch
You know,
Fox.
did you even when woke was new and hip, right?
Uh,
You know, did you use it much?
not really. I never used woke, but I have used it now more often because now people kind of understand. Oh, you mean having a very moral, which is this is the ironic thing that the moral people are the woke people, but the anti woke people are the people who say they're moral, but they're not really very moral. Or
Yeah,
the anti woke people are the very hyper religious people who probably don't have a right to say that they're hyper religious or even moral by being anti woke. So anyway, all right.
yeah.
So,
Well,
so
the reason I raise it is I didn't use it, at all. I was very
I
familiar with the use of the language, as it was coming up from young people. Right, it always starts on the black side, and
mm,
it starts among younger people, and then it gets picked up, particularly in institutionalized education. It gets picked
yeah.
up in ethnic studies programs and projects, and
Hey,
then it
now,
starts being used in the media.
now,
But when it's
yeah.
used in the media, it's not used because they're trying to be woke. It's
Mm,
used to describe people who they perceive as the media perceives as being woke. And that is when the right picks up the term and then uses it as a sledgehammer
uh,
to define it in very negative ways that affirm racist attitudes, misogynistic attitudes, right?
mm,
Anti-immigration.
yeah.
Okay.
So now, so Dan, so now you're throwing some shade at some mainstream media people who use the
Yep.
word woke, right?
Yep.
Now,
Uh,
shade, throwing shade. Now that's
that's kind of
woke.
wokey.
That's kind of wokey.
That's it. It's wokey-ish.
So, all right. So we managed to talk about the 303 creative case in the Supreme Court. We won't get into the independent state legislature case because that probably is even more detrimental to democracy if it passes. But once again, we have a very conservative court that's open to looking at the independent legislature case,
Even
whereby,
when at least one of them should recuse
yeah, yeah.
because of the blatant activities of one's spouse.
Oh yes, yes. You're talking about uh, Justice Thomas and his
Right.
his wife. Well, this is the thing. We're not going to hear a, a resolution or a decision on either the independent legislature case, whereby North Carolina says it has a right as a legislature to do anything you want. They can draw up lines, voting, redistricting lines, whatever. They can do that, and they can do it any way they want, and they don't have to say boo to a state Supreme Court, to any Supreme Court, because they're an independent legislature. It does away with all checks and balances, and
That's right.
there
That's the
goes
major point. The
there
major
goes
point
our,
is it's really destructive of the so-called balance of power.
and there goes our democracy if that happens. Anyway, let's hope that doesn't happen. We talked about the creative 303 creative case, which could legalize discrimination in certain cases. Uh, Finish off on Christian cinema, because we did not have a time to really understand the beauty of a 51 seat Democratic majority in the Senate. We still
Before
have
she
one.
missed, yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah,
messes up by saying she's going to be independent, but
right.
apparently she's going to still serve or caucus with the Democrats. So she's
Like
I
the
don't
other
understand.
two, like the other two independent senators, right?
Yeah, King and Angus King
Sanders
and
and
Bernie
Sanders.
Sanders.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you can't be independent and Republican. You're independent and Democrat always, really, kind of. Is that what that means?
No, Murkowski won re-election
Right.
after having lost a primary. That was really an interesting exercise for her. Everybody
Mm,
knew that she was still a Republican, but she declared as an independent to be able to run against people who were
right.
supported by Trump, basically, and she
Yeah.
won. But yeah, she didn't retain, the independent status. She did it as a political maneuver, and she was very well rewarded for it. Uh,
Yeah.
I like Murkowski. Senator Murkowski is an
Yeah.
intelligent conservative.
Yeah.
Uh,
I like her too. But this is the thing. I begrudgingly think that cinema is doing a. I mean, from a purely political standpoint, she's doing a good thing for herself.
exactly. Yes. I
Yeah.
think off mic, we had discussions about this in the past, and
Yeah.
so we might as well put it out there.
Yeah.
She is entirely self-seeking.
Yeah.
Her big money does not come from small donors. Her big money comes from big money.
Yeah.
It comes from large donors, comes from major corporations, particularly involved in communications and transportation,
Right.
those kinds of big corporate interests. That's who butters her bread, and that's who she's loyal to. It's parallel to Manchin and
Oil.
Cole.
Oh, coal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad that as much as I would like to celebrate the Democrats' 51 seat majority and the runoff, I thought the runoff was really gratifying to see Asian Americans be the difference. I mean, Warnock won by about 103,000 votes ultimately by the last tally, and there are about 130,000 Asian American votes. Asian Americans could have represented that margin. And in fact, about 80% of the registered of the voters, Asian American voters, according to the ALDEF poll, sided with Warnock. So I think after the runoff, people are looking at Asian Americans and saying, hey, in certain districts, small in number, but they can be the margin for victory. And that means they'll talk to you and listen to you and see you.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
then when you show up for a vote like that, it has a local effect. It
Yeah.
enables recognition of candidates, potential candidates coming from the Asian American communities.
And that's what
Um,
we're seeing. That's what we're seeing. I
yeah,
mean, it's funny, like in our day, 70s, 80s, 90s, to get Asian American candidates, not that frequent. You wouldn't see Asian
it was
American
really
candidates.
difficult. It was really difficult because most of the time you knew that the Asian American was not going to win. The only time we saw, even in San Francisco, right, good old liberal San Francisco,
Right.
Seattle was actually far ahead of San Francisco in terms
Oh
of
yeah.
Asian Americans being in elected and appointed office. But for us, the first two Asian American appointees, first two on both the supervisors and on the supervisors and other commissions, were all appointee positions. Uh, and I'm trying to remember who the first supervisor to
The
run
first,
for election.
could it be like Gordon Chin, something like
It
that?
was Gordon. It was Gordon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just pulled that name out of the. I mean,
the
I
memory
just
bank.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I couldn't say Dick Serbatos' name the other day when I was in a panel and trying to figure out who the first Filipino Board of Education member was.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
he was not. He was appointed too. He was appointed by Dianne Feinstein,
Boy,
and
no.
uh, and then he
Yeah,
was forced to resign
yeah.
by a strong showing from other members of the board,
Mhm.
uh, based on their allegations that he violated the conflict of interest law that had been recently passed as a statewide law, and it was overbroad. It was really a badly drafted law, but
But
it was supported by three members of the board, and most importantly, the district attorney, Arlo Smith, at the time.
yeah,
And
I
and
didn't.
so they essentially said you got to make. Arlo Smith said make remuneration and resign, and we won't press charges. So that's exactly and the conflict of interest law was a felony. Violating that law was a felony, which meant he was at risk for a year in jail, in addition to the uh, paying whatever. I think the amount came to around $38,000 total, and it
Yeah,
was because yeah,
I didn't realize that about Dick. But I brought it up because there was. I mean, he represented Filipino Americans and Asian Americans on the board
he
of
was
education.
very strong in terms of his representation of all of those groups. And that's one of the reasons that he received support even from the Chinese American community. He
Well,
was very popular and very well supported from the Chinese American community. He also was very popular and well supported from the Latino
yeah,
community in San
yeah.
Francisco. He made terrific alliances with the African American community. So that was one of the reasons they targeted him. They
Yeah.
wanted to get rid of him because he was successful in building a strong coalition
Well,
of
look,
people of color.
just to go back to Georgia on that term you used, coalition, people of
Yes,
color, because it was a coalition that helped get Warnock through. I mean, it was blacks,
absolutely.
it was Asians, it was Latinos, it was a combination of suburb and urban area. And this we know from looking at that ALDEF poll. People should go to aldef.org/blog where I write about this and check out the ALDEF exit poll. One of the few well, I think the only exit poll that targeted Asian Americans. Now, it only went to mostly the Atlanta suburbs, but that's where the Asian Americans were. It's highly targeted, and it showed that about 80% of Asian Americans voted for Warnock. And get this is what I thought was strange about the ALDEF. Not strange, but insightful. Young people were very pro Warnock. Young people
Yes,
by far,
yes,
and the only pro Walker group in Asian Americans were Asian Americans 70 plus, older Asian
yeah,
Americans.
yeah.
I guess
I mean that's really high. That's my own age group,
yeah, I guess
but
is that the Asian American generation gap? I mean, 70 and
yeah,
over.
yes it is, and
Yeah,
most of those people of my age group
mm,
were the first generation arrivals. They're the first
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
So
Asian
some
Americans.
of them were, yeah. Even if there were three generations within one immigrant family,
Yeah,
okay, the people who are now in their 70s plus were the people who came in after 1965 and onward, particularly after the fall of Saigon, right? After
Yeah.
75.
Well, get this: Asian American voters age 70 or over, right? 37.5% Warnock, 62.5% Walker. It's the highest vote for Walker in any of the demographics from 18 to 70, and it's the lowest for Warnock from any group 18 to 70. It's
They're very pro-Republican.
yeah,
They're very
and
pro-Republican. They really like all of the Republican actions. Uh, and you and I are thinking, and anybody who's watching, even objectively, right, trying to be objective in their search for facts, right? Um, uh, we instantly think of all of the bad things that Trump
yeah,
did during his administration. Okay, but somehow this older generation of Asian Americans is able to say we like what he accomplished,
yeah,
and I'm I'm always going, what what did he accomplish? He didn't build the freaking
yeah.
wall, but I guess you like the fact that he tried.
Or
Okay,
or that he's
he separated. They separated families because of advice that he was getting, a designed plan by Stephen Miller. Okay, so you like that, right? That's you like the fact that he was hugging on three of the nastiest dictators in the world as it is, right? I guess you like that he said he was in love. There was a mutual love thing going on with Kim Il Sung. What are you talking about?
yeah.
What did he
Kim Jong
accomplish?
Il.
You know,
He walked along the
he-
what is that? The demil.
the DMZ, and then there was some kind of it looks like they were wearing playing large scale
Yeah,
hopscotch, right? There was a box defined, and then they both entered the box and shook hands and embraced. What the heck? I guess that was symbolism of some
yeah.
sort,
Well,
right?
look,
In the meantime, the guy kept on building up his nuclears and shooting
yeah.
missiles.
And the thing
Uh,
is, if you're older, really, if you're older, you were with Walker in Georgia, 70 and over, 62.5%. Uh, and
it's I think it was a Republican
yeah,
thing. I mean, how can you think Walker was capable of the
yeah.
job? It,
Well,
yeah, Trump was not capable of the job. First and foremost, okay.
yeah.
If you're going to look at competency, the guy was not competent for the job of anything, right? He
You're
would
talking
have
about
been a
Walker,
lousy.
Walker, or
No,
Trump.
Trump.
Oh, Trump. Oh,
Trump
yeah,
Trump Trump
yeah,
was completely incompetent. He couldn't even have served well on the city council for New York,
yeah,
if
yeah.
he had tried for that. And here he is running successfully for the most powerful position of any nation in the world, and
Well,
he
because
succeeds, but
white people.
without the popular vote. He
Well, that's
succeeds without
because,
the popular vote. You know,
but that's because white people believe in a certain amount of white affirmative action, and so that's that's why.
I-
And just like and
you know what? We should do that. Let's do it. Let's apply the standards of affirmative action to
yeah.
Donald Trump and see if he's worthy.
Well, I
Okay.
mean, you got to say he's not qualified. He's just there. So, and so he returned the
Well,
favor
but see, why is it that they were willing to vote for an unqualified person? I mean, there is no way that you could argue that the guy was qualified. The only thing
because
that they cited was he's a businessman, right?
yeah. But look, it has nothing. It only has to do with could he win, and they had the feeling that he could win because there were people out there trying to unseat him or trying to push him off
Sure.
the
Well,
pedestal,
in
and
the
they
pro-
couldn't
you
do
know
it. They couldn't do
when
it.
the Republicans were
Traditional.
running at what didn't they have like 17 people or something
Yeah, they had
in
a
the
lot.
original? Yeah,
They couldn't.
they they
Not a
had to
one of
break it up into two teams, right? And yeah,
it was sad that the Republicans did not have they didn't have a clue. So they ultimately went with the guy who could win. And this is where the Republican Party is now. They don't have any good options. When their best option is to ask Donald Trump, who says, "Well, I can find some more Herschel Walkers to run for other offices. You
Oh
know,
man, that
it's
was
ridiculous.
that was the
I mean,
most racist thing. That was the one that was so racist. Okay, no, all we got to do is find another black man. That's
yeah,
all we got to do. Okay,
and
because
not a
they
smart
want
one.
to elect a black man, we put up a black man, and we use a wolf to kill a wolf, right? That's
He
it.
made, yeah, he made Ben Carson look like hyper intelligent. Herschel
Well,
Walker.
Mr. Carson actually is very intelligent. It's just
He
that,
is. He's
yeah,
not a great politician,
no, no, he was horrible as a politician.
but he
Um,
was. I'm not saying he's not smart, but he was not a gifted politician. As
no,
nice a guy as he may have been, but
yeah,
anyway. So Georgia, we don't get a chance to take a real victory lap for the Democrats. But now Sinema says she's not going to,
she wants
you
to
know,
keep her committee. She wants to keep her committee assignments, man. If she wants to do that, she's gonna have to caucus with the Democrats the same way that Sanders
Sanders.
and King do. Yeah,
So it doesn't serve anyone except Kristen Sinema, who can
that's
say,
right.
"Look, I'm an I." But here's what. Let's close it on this. I looked at her position and I'm thinking, she says she doesn't fit into any political box, but isn't this the case with any with a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats, right? Especially right now, they don't fit into any traditional blocks or box of DNR. And I mean, how many times do you look at the Democrat Party or whatever party you align yourself with? I'm guessing Democratic, but how many times do you say, "God, I don't see eye to eye with them"? Um, Either to the left or to the right of them. I'm assuming more to the left of them. I feel the same way about the Democrats. I can't even think about going Republican. Uh, maybe maybe this is a chance for other eyes to find themselves.
Oh yeah. Well, aren't there more eyes now than actually nationwide?
I
Uh,
don't know. The
I
traditional
think I
sense
think there
was,
are. I think independents now, or people who fail to state. We
mm,
can't always assume that they actually
right,
self-define as independents. So you got
right,
to include fail to state a party preference or fail to affiliate.
mm,
And several states now, California being one of them, right? One of the first actually, to allow people to vote across party lines on each other's primaries and stuff, right?
yeah, yeah,
So you could vote on both if you just come in as an as an independent. I tell that to my students. I said, look, I'm not here to encourage you to just sign up with the Democrats. I have critical perspectives on Democratic policy, sometimes on the very local level. Sometimes it's a state level. Sometimes it's a city thing, right? Especially in San Francisco.
yeah,
But I tell them that I'm not going to encourage you to join either party or become active in either party unless you make that choice freely on your own. But I would encourage you to consider uh, declaring as an independent. Largely because of California's allowing people to vote in primaries, right?
yeah.
So
I,
that,
I,
that and
I
then
think I would.
we're going ranked choice. There's more and more cities that are going ranked choice now. So,
Yeah, I, I, I still feel weird about ranked choice.
oh yeah,
I
so do
think,
I.
if you want to save money, great, but um, penny wise, pound foolish is the kind of thing. Well, I mean, you got to have. I think a head to head is great, and you need that. You had Warnock and Walker going to head, and there was no if, ands, or buts, right? I mean, I think one of the gracious things that Herschel Walker could have done, and to show America, is that he conceded, and he did.
And he
And
did. He
yeah.
also he also said some things that were kind of almost critical of Trump.
Oh, say respect the Constitution.
Yeah,
We said,
yeah.
yeah,
Everybody's got to get out and vote.
yeah,
Voting is one of the most important things you can do, and that was kind of a dig at Trump's only vote on voting day.
yeah.
You know, it's really I had that was
Well,
one of the last. I rarely tweet nowadays, but one of the last things that I tweeted was "Ain't gonna be no red wave."
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that Trump's advice to his minions that they should only vote on voting day, right? Because everything else is corrupt, okay, or corruptible. I said that's going to work against them, and it
yeah,
did.
yeah.
You know,
Well, a lot of people are looking at what Trump says and does and says, why are we listening to this guy? And I think people
Bec-
need to, you
because
know,
millions of people still support him. That's why we listen to him. We,
yeah.
you know,
No, but why do millions of people, uh, not people who are against Trump or people who, I mean, why do the people who support him, all right, why do the people who follow him if he's number one, wrong, like on early voting, or number two, if he's a loser, and probably
um,
number three, if he gets indicted several times
but he
before.
blames he blames the losing on everybody else,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that
Well,
that gives his minions the ability to side up with him and say, yeah, it's somebody else's fault. You know, I mean,
yeah.
once they started saying it's the media, right? Okay, and remember Carrie Lake, those bastards, right? She was her
Yeah.
whole career, what
He was a
over
bastard
20
too.
years, man. She was one of them bastards, right?
Former bastard. All right. So, like Dan, Donald Trump has more stuff happening,
Oh yeah, he's gonna no.
legal wise. He's and every
Almost two
day.
years ago, almost 2 years ago, man. You know when, yeah, right around the time of the election, the 2020 election, I said I was talking to one of my relatives. You're familiar with this person, but anyway, I'm not going to mention him outright. And I said it's going to be hard as hell for him to take office while he's in jail. Okay, because I was very confident even then that at least the state actions against him, and we didn't even Malago yet. That didn't hate
Yeah.
yet. That hadn't happened. And the all of the facts around his famous phone to Raffensperger in Georgia, right?
Georgia. Yeah. Well,
That
now.
hadn't come out yet. But just on what New York AG and then the New York DA.
Hmm.
Now Bragg is resurrected now, right? I was really want to go for
Yeah.
an indictment or even a grand jury. You didn't want to convene a grand that route, and now he's willing to because everybody else did the freaking work.
Yeah. Well, what really gets me is that we have to spend so much time and mental energy on undoing all the crap that Trump has gotten us into and gotten himself into. And I you know, there's just so much, and I think a lot of people are they just want to like throw up their hands and say, "Oh, just I don't know what they're going to say." Not let him go, not let him go. But
No, they yeah that I see that's the difference. The Republicans were smart enough when Nixon messed up, right? And one the prosecution of his West Wing, right,
mm,
was successful. With John Dean getting the lightest sentence because he snitched, right?
mm,
Uh, and but the Republicans were smart enough to understand that if they didn't do that and move Nixon out of there, the likelihood that not only would he be impeached, but that he would be removed from office, there would be enough votes to remove him from the Senate, and then he would be susceptible to prosecution as ordinary Nixon. Richard Nixon, the
oh, you're
American
for
citizen.
yeah,
So they were, but that's not the case with Trump. And the only reason, Republican Party. That's it. They're afraid of their own constituents. You know,
yeah. That's the thing. It's time. I mean, people thought maybe when Herschel Walker lost that we're going to see the avalanche occur when it all falls apart for Donald Trump. I think it's beginning on the legal front, but it's still going to take a while because I
Oh
still
yeah,
see a lot of people who are they're hanging in there with him, and that's really I think distressing. But
yeah.
um, anyway, all right. So I don't really feel like talking about all the Donald Trump
No,
stuff right
the
now.
crazy stuff is going to be coming from the Republicans in the House, and
Yeah,
it's going to be major distraction. They really are going to try to impeach everybody,
yeah.
including Joe Biden. They
Well,
really are going to do that.
they're gonna take everyone. They're gonna burn everything down. I mean, if Trump goes down, they're gonna burn everything down. Then we're gonna have to start all over. It's kind of apocalyptic. That's the only way that Donald Trump wants to leave with an apocalyptic aura because it's not good enough. If he just simply leaves quietly. Yeah,
Well, let me ask you
unfortunately.
this. This is something that I've asked of some of the other people I've had these conversations with. Do you think he would be? Let's say he gets convicted.
Mm.
Okay, he
That would be a
doesn't show
test.
up. He doesn't show up for trial. He gets convicted. He's going to go to jail. Do you think he'll stay in this country?
Well, I've often said that this is why he keeps friendly relations with Vladimir Putin. He wants that Russian tower in Moscow. I mean, I just think he's. I don't think he stays. I don't think he stays. If it's that, I think he goes into exile first, and that would be something, huh? First president in exile.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that would be like maybe he goes to the Philippines. I don't know.
He's a coward. No, it's too hot. It's too warm. Too sweaty. Yeah, it
He'd
does
have
have a
to
lot
go.
of golf courses, though. They do have a lot of golf courses.
He might like Turkey. No, the Finns. They would. Turkey might take him.
Yeah,
Russia for
Finland is
sure.
too far north. I think yeah, if he could go to Russia. He could
Yeah, and
go.
he's got a
He
Trump
might go to
properties.
Brazil or something. But that all kind of depends on whether or not Putin or somebody like Putin,
Yeah.
similar ilk, is in power in Russia. He has to go somewhere friendly.
I don't know who's friendly with him.
With,
North
with
Korea.
North
North
Korea.
Korea with his lover.
That's right. I
All right. All
don't
right. So
want to.
okay.
Oh yeah.
Let me touch on a couple other
I don't
things.
know. A lot of weird imagery just hit my head, man. You don't want to talk about it.
Hey, all right, Dan. Look, we talk about the military a lot when you're on.
Yeah.
Sometimes, Pearl Harbor Day. I only
Yes,
saw one reference to Pearl Harbor Day on
it
December
was very
7th.
brief.
Did you
Yeah.
see any
Oh, I
references?
did. I did. I did.
Did-
All of the major channels,
Mm,
both antenna and cable or satellite, did some level of coverage, but usually they ran battle scenes, right, with boats being ships being hit and sinking, with some survivors standing on the edge of a hull that was now lying on its side,
mm.
and then the explosions of the Arizona, and then also the memorial site,
Yeah.
and so there was some coverage, but it was very brief.
Yeah. It's
Um,
almost like, to me, it was like there was none. I mean, I was really surprised. I mean, I had TV on. I was looking and I could find, I knew what day it was, so I can go to my own sources, but I wanted to see how it would be covered. Very surprised that it got kind of cursory. And oh, by the way, it's Pearl,
yep,
it was
it
almost
was
begrudgingly
very
mentioned.
brief.
Yeah.
Yep,
And then
I agree.
on the 8th, the declaration of, you know, US
Yeah, well, they covered that with old newsreel footage of Roosevelt and his Day of Infamy speech.
Yeah. But I on this show I covered it from the standpoint of how Asian Americans here, uh, how they reacted, and as we know, the Filipinos were very anti-Japanese, to not just Japanese nationals but Japanese Americans.
That's
I
right.
mean, it was a kind of split, but there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in the Filipino American community.
That's right.
Because the next target of the Japanese after Pearl Harbor was Manila, And
Yeah, was
so,
yeah. What they were only separate by less than 24 hours. I think it was 18
yeah, it's like
hours.
10 hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really short. After Pearl Harbor, then they hit the Philippines, and that brought out the patriotic fervor in Filipinos here, but it was also anti-Japanese, and
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
sad time, sad to think about that, because some of those wounds or some of those the things, the emotions that came up back then, still with us, still with the
Oh
community or
yeah.
in the community.
Oh yeah. My mother swore off anything Japanese, and it was easy to do in the post-war era because Japanese industry was laid waste, right?
Yeah,
But they started sending over cheap products, particularly recycled products in the form of toys, right? Very cheap toys,
yeah,
and started rebuilding their economy by selling cheap exports, and that continued. All started using American patents and having American companies. They were contracting with American companies to use American labels and sell cheaper products to us here, and that was a service to working class and lower middle class consumers. So remember, are you old enough to remember the really early transistor radios?
oh yeah, yeah,
You know,
that's where you listen to the volume.
yeah, every kid held the baseball games right, right to their head, right? Any game, whatever the sport was that was whatever the season was, we were listening, and baseball was played almost every day.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was
it
stuck
was
to our
it was
heads, right?
baseball, but it was also the Beatles and
Oh yeah, well, even
A-
yeah, for you it was the Beatles.
AM
For me,
radio,
it was AM radio, rock and
rock
roll.
and roll,
You know,
and that was
rock and roll, and then there was segregated stations. So
black stations. They had
so
black stations.
KDIA, KSOL,
Yeah,
right?
Keystone.
KSOL.
Yeah,
They would do race music. It was called race music
yeah,
in the American print media.
yeah. I remember that. Oh yeah, and that was how I learned English, or I learned to sound the way I sound. I listened to the radio and the AM disc jockey. They were my heroes.
Right, right.
But that was because the Japanese manufacturers flooded the market, right, with radios.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh,
Yeah, and with American labels.
yeah.
When they started using American labels, that's what got them more of the market
Oh yeah,
share,
your brand.
and that's what started.
Your
Well,
brand
with
was
the with the
Philco.
transistor radio,
Wasn't your brand Phil?
believe it or not, it was Magnavox.
It wasn't
My first transistor radio, yeah,
it, wa-
it was
it
Magnavox.
wasn't Philco?
Philco was the television, and that was not my decision. That was my parents' decision.
Okay. At the Philco radio. Philco.
The first rather relatively large screen.
Yeah.
They had a fair black and white screen
Oh,
television that lasted forever. I mean, that thing years old, and that thing up until I was like second year college, and it still worked. It still worked,
wow.
but parents, my mom, she gave it away, because it was just another thing. We had by then transitioned into color TVs upstairs. I had a small black and white
Yeah.
portable in my room, but yeah, yeah, that thing was still working, man. And it had
Was
only
it
been
did
repaired, I think, once.
we had a console that was there was a TV next to a radio with a record player. Did you have one of those?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen those. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember those.
I know
The
how we had
screen was
that.
tiny, though.
The
The screen
screen was
was
like
tiny.
smaller than a Zoom screen. No, it
You
was
got yeah. You only got Jackie Gleason's left shoulder and elbow. It was basically you couldn't get the whole.
yeah.
You saw the June Taylor dancers, but you'd be lucky if you saw their legs. Yeah, the screen was so small, just get their upper body. Yeah, I remember those.
That's funny. Yeah. So, all right. So, Pearl Harbor Day and the racism in our community. Uh, let's talk just a little bit about the same-sex marriage law that got it. Well, it was passed. It cleared Congress. It's going to go to Biden for signature. It will be
Right.
signed, no
Right.
doubt.
Interestingly, it got in the House. It got, what was it, 69
I
Republican votes.
I forget the exact
Yeah, because
number.
there were under 170 no's.
Yeah. Well,
So
get
in order for that to happen, there was a substantial number of Republicans had to uh, had to vote yes on it. Yeah.
some did, but Kevin McCarthy didn't.
Oh
The
no,
big
no, of course not.
and
He
you know
needs to win that speakership.
I was surprised that he didn't vote for being. He's from California. We know why it got out of the Senate. They really lobbied hard in the Senate.
Yeah, but he's from the southern part of the Central Valley, man. I mean that,
Yeah. Well, still, it's California, but I just think that
I don't know. Do they have, people
do
getting married in?
we well that's where that area that area has been known for homophobes
Yeah,
and like remember a guy named Pete Knight.
yeah.
Yeah, he's from down from around there, and it's just to me it was disappointing to see that Kevin McCarthy is just purely venal and self-serving and unprincipled that he couldn't even vote for the protection of marriage. Um, I
He
thought it was
can't.
interesting.
He can't. He's stuck, man. Because once again, it's the pro-Trump constituents that he's got to worry about if he's going to. He's already got 5 people who say they're no on him.
Yeah,
And then one of them, Biggs, right?
yeah. Andy
He
Biggs out
wants
of
to run
Arizona.
against him. He wants to compete for the speakership.
He needs everyone. That's the thing
Yeah.
about Kevin
Well, the guy
McCarthy.
that's lying in wait is Jim Jordan. Jim
Oh
Jordan
yeah,
wants, if if McCarthy doesn't get the speakership, if he doesn't get 218 votes, Jim Jordan is going to say, well, somebody's got to do this thing. Let's see if we can't go. He would have a better shot. I think. I know. I'd be wondering whether or
oh,
not
he'd
he
be
finally
terrible. He,
is he going to finally roll down his sleeves and wear a jacket.
no, no. I don't know. I can't. I can't. No. What
Jim
about
Jordan.
Marjorie Taylor Greene? She's got a shot too.
No, she's a little bit too hard edged, and
Well,
I mean, she's not
but
camera ready.
but people have to deal with her.
She
People.
she
I
ain't
mean,
no
people
Carrie
have to
Lake,
make.
man. She ain't no Carrie Lake. You know.
But
She
people have to deal with her to make sure they have her support. I don't know. I'm glad this is happening to Kevin McCarthy. He deserves it. But let's move on since we're not going to solve that problem. But
Yeah.
let's move on to one of the softer topics that we can talk about, and that is sports. Because usually, you know, sports is the distraction that we come to or that we can talk about to make us forget that we are in the throes of this great divided, political landscape. And boy, I don't know what. And we're both from San Francisco, so I'm a big Giants fan, and I presume you are to a degree, or you must
Yeah,
be.
ever since they got here, ever since '58 when they got here.
So, what about Aaron Judge? The fact that the Giants could not land Aaron Judge, I
Uh,
think,
I
I think
think yeah,
that
you're. I think they could have played. They could have gone 400 mil and see what happens. But I don't think. I think he wanted to stay in New York.
he might have, but God, they were playing up the home. He's not really
Yeah,
hometown
yeah.
because
Well,
if you grew up in Linden and went to Fresno State, San Francisco is just a proximity thing. It's not like you're from there, but he did grow up watching the
right.
Giants from Linden.
That's right.
So, and he
Well,
liked,
we got that guy named Brady who's going to be playing tomorrow,
yeah, well,
and he wanted to play for the Niners, and he got turned down 5 times or something like that.
yeah,
He was a low draft pick.
yeah,
Aaron Rodgers came out of Berkeley. He
yeah,
wanted to be a Niner,
yeah.
and we turned him down. So so
Just
we're doing really good, right? Joe
San Francisco.
Montana was a
Yeah,
low draft pick, right?
yeah,
And he's freaking great, right?
yeah,
And
yeah. Well, I
Steve Young was a little bit better than that.
yeah. Well, the thing about Montana was he was good. He was good, and then they let him go. He ended up playing for Kansas City later and other teams. But I think the thing about Aaron
And he
Judge.
took him to another championship. Don't
Yeah.
leave that out. He led him to another championship, and
Now,
we got rid of we got rid of Smith, and he did well over there.
Dan, you can't mix baseball and the Niners. Although the local teams not being that smart. Sometimes the local teams are smarter. Sometimes they're dumber.
I don't know.
I
The Giants, oh, man, we gave up
the, the,
lots of
the
really
thing
good people.
the thing about the Giants is that they want to be the new Oakland A's. They they want to be the new.
You
Uh,
mean their top three hitters were gonna all go on steroids? What do you mean?
no. The new Oakland A's because the A's were Moneyball. The
Yeah, yeah,
A's got cheap players and had them at career year levels, and then let them go. And then they're cheap and didn't want to pay top dollar. And the problem with the Giants is they want to build a championship team with a bunch of like small, really nobodies, as they develop and become somebody, and but no big stars.
right,
And you can kind of see that because it makes sense to have young players who are great, get them as they ascend, and then don't pay them. Because what happens is they get these young players, they ascend, and then they pay them long-term contracts to stay, and they're not really as good anymore. But
right.
and yet you they they were owed that money for all the great things they did when they were young. So, you know, it's just the corporate mindset is don't pay these guys, when they reach their their
The
ascent.
apex of their
Yeah,
career. Yeah,
yeah, and the highest value, get rid of them, take your dollars, and then find the new players. I guess that's one way to do it. But you know what? You will never. You don't have a ball. You don't have a ball club with stars, and people want to go to see the Giants in person because they. I mean, win or lose, if they had a star, if they had someone that you'd want to see play, you'd say, "I want to see Willie Mays. I want to."
well, one example of that is they had a recently retired catcher
Oh yeah,
who,
Buster
who
Posey.
was and
I
yeah,
did, but he's
and
not. Buster Posey was good, but he's not someone I wanted to see play. I
why not?
mean, I well, he was good, but he's a catcher, and I look,
Yeah, but
I say that as a former catcher. I just think because, like I said, he wasn't like the star center fielder. He wasn't like a star first baseman, Willie McCovey. He wasn't like a star third, uh, well, like second baseman, Jeff Kent. I would have seen.
yeah, well, okay. A better example would be all of the Willies, right?
Yeah,
McCovey and Mays, they stayed for a long time. Cepeda, I think he came on and then retired as a
yeah,
Giant, right, from the game.
yeah. All these
Mays
'60s guys.
retired
Wait,
as a
wait a
Giant.
minute. Wait a minute. They traded away Cepeda. Cepeda played for the St. Louis Cardinals for a little bit.
Oh, and I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
they got rid of
You're
him.
right.
I'm just saying that
But
you
they're
got to.
but they played for a long time. So they're
Yeah,
I'm trying to support your position that you got to
well,
have stars. You got to have people who are
yeah.
stars.
You need stars
How about
that people
Davenport?
want to see play. Davenport was good, but he wasn't a star. He was good.
Yes, he was.
Davenport,
I
that
mean,
third base.
even in his
No,
old age, he was making great plays, man, from in that position.
he was all right. He was a good third baseman, but Davenport was not. He's not Hall of Fame. I mean,
Wow, you're right. He's not.
he was good. He was a good local play. He was good.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
but
Hal Lanier was
he
not.
got his name on a mitt. He-
that they sold to San Francisco kids. Uh,
Yeah.
no, I look. I'm just saying, if the Giants want to turn, I don't even know where the Giants are. Where their best player is Yastrzemski. Is he their best player now? I just knew when they signed this guy. I think his name is Mitch Haniger, who is good. He's better outfield than one they have now, but he wasn't Aaron Judge, and he doesn't make me want to buy a ticket to see the Giants play. You know, honestly, you need a star. You need someone like
Yeah.
ah
The guys
who
that they get rid of the fastest are pitchers. It's like a revolving door of
well,
pitchers.
and people would come to see a star pitcher, like you'd come to
Yep.
see Bumgarner again.
That's
You,
what
you,
they did back in the day, man. I mean,
yeah.
remember the great legendary year after year battles between the Giants and the Dodgers?
Oh yeah, with
Yep.
Marichal and
Yep.
Dry
Yeah.
versus Drysdale or versus
McCormick.
Koufax.
Yeah.
Mike McCormick, versus
Yeah.
Koufax and Drysdale.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I I do remember those years. You just need the Giants are trying to put it together with second string players who are having career years, which is fine if you can win. You save money, you're a good business, but you're not a draw. You're not an attraction. You need stars. So that's all I'll say about the Giants. It's depressing even talking about it because I can't even tell you who they're going to have on the field next year. Wilmer Flores, nice guy, not a star. Um, Mike Yastrzemski, nice guy, but not even as good as his grandfather, Carl Yastrzemski.
Yeah,
If they,
Carl.
if they brought back his grandfather, I'd see him. Oh, there's 80-year-old Carl Yastrzemski out
Yeah.
there. Oh, I paid a ticket to see him. Oh, they're wheeling him around. Oh, he's on the wheelchair. He's
Uh,
making the catch. Uh, uh, really, and Brandon Crawford, I like, but I guess they like him a lot too because they didn't go after any of the big shortstops
no.
like Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts. Maybe they'll get Correa, the guy from
Yeah.
Rockies.
Yeah. Who's the second base?
Second base, Tyro Estrada, I think.
Yeah. Boy,
Not
did
bad.
he. No, well, as a fielder,
Yeah.
watching him with some hard ground balls,
Uh-huh.
and then doing ballet and
Mhm.
getting rifle shots to first base
Yeah.
to get people out. Whoa! I mean,
Yeah.
I
If
would
I
go to watch him do that because
well,
man, he's just fantastic,
you are
athleticism.
easy to please, Dan. You are easy to
What?
put. I
Yeah, but, hey man, it's got to be pretty. I mean, it's
I
like,
like him. I like him enough, but you need like a star player. Aaron Judge would have been that.
oh
Every
yeah, of course.
everyone, and he plays every day. You would say, I want to see Aaron Judge hit a home run, and then that
Yeah.
would be a great thing. If Giants win or lose, and then if the attendance was down, they needed someone like
Okay,
Aaron
so you're
Judge.
saying we got a management problem.
Well,
they gotta.
I don't know what happened. They didn't pull the trigger. I like Farhan Zaidi, Asian.
We're still getting good attendance. So there,
No, not that good.
we're
They,
still,
they don't
well,
sell out. They don't
by
sell out.
good I mean, yeah, it's not packed anymore. But
No,
yeah, yeah. I mean, they have some evening games. Depending on It depends on who's they're
all of them.
playing.
All of them are practically
Yeah,
are
they're
evening.
evening games now. Yeah, because they're
Yeah.
catering to that after work crowd, right?
Well, that's the whole thing about baseball. It's a nighttime entertainment. And when I was covering the Giants for a little bit, 20 see 2011, 12, 13, 14, I all the games were at night and the attendance was like consistently. All right, 2010 average attendance like 37,000, 41,000 in 2011, 41,000 for like between 2011 and 2017. It was like 40,000. And
Yeah, and
now,
what's max capacity is 42, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Well, but 40, if you get 41 to 40, that's great. They only got 30,000 in 2022.
Ooh.
And, and in 2021, when it was COVID, or after COVID, 20,000.
Ugh.
That's when they won 107 games, and that was a pretty good. They want to be the best of the mediocre, is what they really want to be.
That was a good team. You're right.
Yeah,
That was
but
a good
and they
team.
were the
They
best
had
of the
they had
mediocre.
pitching. They had pitching.
If they had one more, one more bat. I mean, they
Yeah,
could.
that's right.
Bryce Harper. They had Chris Bryant that year, and he turned out to be kind of a okay. He was a name, but Bryce Harper would have been good. Bryce Harper would have helped them last year when they were 81 and 81. So anyway, the Giants' key to success is getting to the wild card, getting to the mix, don't win the division, and then be the last one standing and win the World Series. And that's what happened in 2010 the 2010 they finished first. 2011 they finished second, and they didn't make it into the World Series. But 2012 they finished first and got to the World Series. So, you know, but the idea is that the wild card is a way in, and that's how you get in with mediocre players who have career years, and they just I don't know, it's just a lousy way to build a ball team. I think. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Baseball season will be here before too long, but one last one on Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt.
Oh,
Were you saddened by that?
oh, yeah. Well, they did a two-step thing again. A couple of days ago, right? He could come back before the end of the season,
They're
and then
saying now they could. They're saying now he can, maybe in 7 8 weeks. So maybe
yeah,
by time they make the playoffs, assuming they make the playoffs, they'll have him back. I don't know. It's just when the world is falling apart, the importance of these sports teams is that they give you a sense of, I know, they make you feel good about where you're at. They're
well,
my team,
yeah,
my city. You know,
sure.
that's the only way.
Curry was getting the SI award right last night, and
Curry,
yeah,
Stephen
so
Curry, the basketball player, was getting an award from the Jesuit high school you went to.
no, no.
Oh, SI, Sports
Yeah,
Illustrated.
yeah.
Was he
I
really?
got a Sports Illustrated sweatshirt, and people think, oh man, does SI have that thing? I said no, this is sports. It's Sports Illustrated, dude. But
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah.
uh, and it was all political. It was very political because you had people talking about BG being back,
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah. We didn't talk
and
about that much. But yeah, what
yeah.
did they say?
Uh,
Thank
Well,
goodness.
it's big time politics. The underlying issue is why don't the women make enough money,
Yeah.
in the U.S. market so that they don't have to see themselves going to Europe. The reality is they get paid 2 and 3 times more by going off season
Oh
to
yeah, a
Europe
lot
and other
more,
parts of the world.
a significant amount more. They
Oh
could
yeah,
be paid in the million, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yes, yes.
And here, I mean, when you look at the what the
Well, she
men,
ain't gonna do Russia anymore, that's for sure. But
yeah, well,
I wouldn't even play in any of the other. You're gonna play in Belarus.
yeah.
You're gonna play.
Well, look, a rookie man in the NBA can make, or a second year player in the NBA, male, decent, $3 4 million.
Yeah, that's right.
A woman, a top star in the WNBA, nowhere near that. Nowhere near. Maybe a couple 100,000, maybe. I mean,
No,
that's like a fraction.
you're talking 10%, 10
Yeah, I
fifteen
know.
percent of what a man makes.
I know. It's
Yeah.
a fraction. A fraction.
Well, I mean, geez,
It's
whenever I watch their games,
yeah,
I'm just as engrossed by their play as I
yeah,
am, the men's play. Um,
yeah.
it's one of those areas of sports where there is an equivalence, in terms of level of talent and excitement. You know,
Yeah.
and it's really great to watch their games. And then when you
I
find
like
out,
the women's game. I like the women's game a lot,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I I I I just think that yeah I really love the women's game actually, especially though when there's stars who I have seen like come up through the collegiate ranks. Like I watched Brittany Griner when she played for Baylor. You know,
Right.
when she played the NCAA women's side.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right. She was Texas all the way, huh?
yeah, she was
Yeah.
Baylor,
Yeah.
Baylor Bear. I remember when she was just a freshman playing, and I just knew she was a special player. And so, and then of course all the Yukon players, the Connecticut players, Sue Bird, who retired last year. Um,
So
Rebecca
you
Lobo.
don't want to talk about Istanbul, huh?
Well, no, I like Stanford, but all the Stanford players I liked didn't really do well in the WM. The
No,
ones
they
I
did not in the pros. They didn't do that well in the pros.
like, what's her name, Lindsay Yamasaki was an Asian American player. You didn't
Hmm.
really see. I don't know if she got hurt or something. Um, who else? Lindsay Yamasaki. There was oh a couple of the other later. I stopped watching Stanford basketball maybe like women's maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago. So I kind of lost touch of who the big stars were. Uh, but yeah, I think the fact that they underpay the WNBA, the shorter season, right? That probably is the biggest thing. So they can't pay more, and also they're not on TV as much. I mean, a lot of the money is big TV money that comes to feed them. All right, Dan. While we're on sports, I want to ask you one thing about college because you know college coaches make a hell of a lot of money. College football coaches,
Oh
and
yeah,
and San Francisco.
millions. They
Yes,
make more money than any of the professors or the administrators.
I know. So I I was just wondering if there should be a system by way that head coaches recruit, for players. Should they should different? I'm gonna have to. I'm working on this idea. Should departments, non-athletic departments, use the same kind of approach to seek out diverse faculty or diverse student bodies for their programs? I mean, is there a way that we can borrow from the techniques of the very successful football coaches to bring in talent in these other fields, or is that just
Well, it's been done actually.
yeah,
It's been done. It's the big research. You got to look at which universities bring in the big money already. Okay, because they have an established credibility when they go to foundations and for government grants. So that's one of the reasons that the CSU system started valuing for a short period of time, valued it more than classroom teaching ability. I thought that was a big mistake, but
yeah,
because the greater tradition of the CSU system and of SF State particularly is that we were a teaching college, a teaching university, and we put a lot of emphasis on that rather than publication. But when the size of government, the amount of government support started to wane after the passage of Proposition 13, the CSU system started looking for other ways to get money, and so they jumped into the same pool as all of the tier one research universities to try and get money, and that meant you had to hire people with publication and research and publication records um, because that would attract more funding. So when there was, I'll give you one just really clear example. Two areas were being drawn. The professoriate was being rated by the tech company development, right? That started in the 1990s. Uh, PhDs in anything computer related, right? All the way to coding and information science, right? Hardware development, software development, coding, information, algorithm development. Um, they're being offered millions of dollars in private industry. So how the hell are universities going to compete with that?
How do they?
And they give really large premium salaries. They give housing perks, right, and things like that on top of their basic offers, and they're still not going to get the people who are getting offers from companies in the millions. Um, a friend of mine,
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
had,
You're talking about
yeah,
tech jobs, but now what about the liberal arts?
no, they don't. They don't pay
I know.
money for
So how do
that.
you? I
Uh,
mean, you're
uh,
as far as the liberal arts, you're not competing against the
they,
tech companies, are you?
they tried to do it. They tried to do it at SF State by having uh, as a
Oh yeah,
dean
yeah,
of of,
yeah.
creative
Names.
art at State, and that it kind of worked, but it didn't translate to getting enough money to keep keep lecturers who are really good at their stuff and hire them on instead as a full time tenure track faculty. So it's the sciences where that the big money was presented to candidates. It's the sciences and the traditional hard sciences too, like
But isn't
biochem, right?
but isn't
Biology and chemistry.
isn't there a way though that you can do it for the humanities so that you can build up and keep diverse faculty at the university level?
If you're looking for diversity, which means gender, sexuality, and race, ethnicity, right? Those kinds of issues. Yeah, it's possible, but you run into resistance at the department level
Mhm.
because there is forms of racism and racial preference in those systems. Even if the
Within the
institution,
departments among the
yes, within the
hiring managers.
department, yes. Well, the hiring is done by committee, right?
Yeah.
They make the references depending on all of the systems work the same way. A department goes ahead and says, okay, we need this kind of person. They make a request for money to fund the faculty position. They put out an ad, right, and then they screen candidates. But then the administration has the final say on who they actually hire, and that's where you could get the better offers, uh, and that's also where you get sometimes conflict between the higher administration and the departments.
But is there
Sometimes
budget?
the departments have a
Is there
what is
budget
it
to
about
lure all
budget?
this? Is there a budget to lure the people you
Some
want?
presidents could do that. Some presidents will set aside a budget so that they have some extra money that they can glom onto to sweeten up an offer
Yeah.
to a highly desirable candidate. Okay, but it's all limited. Basically, it still comes down at the CSU system to body count. So
Mm.
how much
Body
money the
count meaning.
university gets.
Uh,
Enrollment. How many students are enrolled?
so, or
So
does it also come into play with how many of those enrolled students will take classes from this one person, or that's not
Well,
related?
that's hard to predict.
Yeah.
We even tried several times running surveys, right? One on what kind of course would attract students, and you run a survey and say, would you take this course? Would you prefer this course over this course? That kind of thing. And then in some instances, some departments, the humanities, creative writing, English professors, you could, uh, there was, Anne Rice came out of SF State.
Right.
So,
The
Tom Wolfe,
vampire.
people, yeah, people like that. And there have been some
Tom
great,
Wolfe, but Tom
yeah.
Wolfe didn't go to SF State.
No, he was a guest professor there for a while.
Tom
Uh,
Wolfe, really?
yeah, yeah. Um,
Electric Kool-Aid acid test guy? That guy?
yeah. Yeah. We've had a lot of people come in as star lecturers doing literature and also on occasion here and there journalism. Sometimes we'll have a politician
Mm,
come in and teach a course at the senior level, undergrad senior level, or at the master's class level, the MA level, for either poli sci or the both. Sometimes they will
yeah,
teach in the
yeah.
College of Ethnic Studies, and we will cross list a class with political science. So yeah, we've done that. But in those instances, there is not a premium salary being paid out, or at
Right.
least not to my knowledge. Those
Well,
kind of
that's the
deals
thing.
may be made, but not to my knowledge.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's not it wouldn't take much to really secure the right diverse faculty, the right diverse students, really. But it's a problem that
There's a whole lot of politics involved. I one There was a search. This is back in the 80s and 90s. Uh, Diversification and hiring more faculty of color, more women, was a major emphasis back in those days. And There was a professor that was hired into political science that was well published. He was well published also as a member of a particular ethnic group, one of the large traditional racial categories in the United States. And he
not
was male.
Filipino.
He was male.
Yeah.
Okay. But he was very old guard. His perspective smacked of misogyny, right?
Mm,
Not an unexpected thing coming out of his age group, uh, of his community.
yeah.
And so there's a price that you pay sometimes. So the guy looks good in publication. He's the right race. But then he's got behavioral problems. And frankly, this guy was very culturally nationalistic. He was very favorable in his treatment in a very nationalistic way of his particular racial category, racial group, and that
So,
brought him into conflict with other
faculty.
communities of color that existed on the campus
So
itself.
yeah, this is the thing. The politics is often the tough part. Hey, look, Dan, I appreciate you just sharing this. I've been asked to talk or to be on a panel of you know uh, some education thing. I'll talk to you more about it later, sometime in January. But I just wanted to get a sense of like what is the issue with why is hiring a diverse faculty and diverse student body or getting a diverse student body, why is it so difficult? I can maybe understand the diverse student body part. That's where the affirmative action and different programs come in. But what about the faculty? I don't know. So, all right, look, we'll talk more about this. But I think it's time to say goodbye.
All
So,
right.
Dan, Dan Gonzales, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies professor. Thank you for taking some time to talk about the academic life and also the academic baseball life of the San Francisco Giants. It is academic. They play baseball, but we don't really know if it's winning baseball.
Yeah.
They will field the team. You just won't know who their players are. They'll have to surprise you. I like it when, hey, a grab bag and you take a player. Oh, he's pretty good. But, you're not talking about these once in a generation stars. That's what the Giants.
No, Giants is excellent. I think your criticism of the Giants is really, really excellent, and it's ironic, right? Because when you
Well,
come to the stadium, particularly the front entrance, right, you see statues of some the greatest players in Giants history, and
of all time,
yeah,
not
and
just
it
if
and
Giants history, but baseball
yeah,
history. Yeah. And who are
and
they
they haven't
now?
done anything like that in generations. They haven't done it.
So
Okay,
they're going to put. I mean, they're really desperate to put up Hunter Pence. I mean, he had a couple of good years, but he's not a Hall of Famer. A couple of good years.
no,
I mean, who are they going to put up now? Here's I don't know, Mike Yastrzemski. Like I said, here's uh Brandon Belt is I think is going to be gone. I just don't know. I'm sad because I don't know if I'm going to be able to wear. I'm going to have to wear orange and black, but it'll be an empty orange and black. It won't be a real Giants
it,
kind of.
it'll just. I always thought it was Halloweeny anyway.
Yeah, it'll be Halloween colors. Anyway, Dan Gonzales, thank you very much for being here. We'll talk
Thanks for
again
having
soon.
me.
All right, Dan Gonzales. There he
All right.
goes. College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. My dear friend, talking about the news, talking about all sorts of things, as he is wont to do, normally on Fridays. Hey, we do this thing Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live. Clearly, we do this without a script. Clearly, we just talk to you truthfully about stuff that's happening, right? I mean, and it always pays, I find, before I say goodbye, to just make sure and check that nothing big has happened while we were talking. Not that, yes, cinema is a big. Oh, and Argentina won. Argentina beat the Netherlands, and according to the Washington Post, the World Cup quarterfinal match between Argentina and Netherlands on Friday rolled deep into the night, flush with extraordinary acts performed by an individual adding to his legend and by a team that extended the show with free kick trickery seconds before the final whistle. God, this is a long anecdotal lead before you get to what we really want. The Argentines prevailed 4-3, keeping alive both Lionel Messi's hope for a first World Cup title and okay. And they got a goalie named Emiliano. So, I got to root for Argentina. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So that's the big news. There's people still talking about Kirsten Cinema. I really think that Kirsten Cinema is kind of going to lead the trend. People are going to go, what about me? I mean, it's always what's in it for me. And if people are thinking about what's in it for me as politicians, it's going to happen to regular people. They're going to say, where am I going to go? Where do I fit in? What political box do I fit in? Kristen Sinema said she doesn't fit into Democrats or Republicans. We feel that now as Asian Americans, as people of color. I think that's an enormous opportunity for somebody. We'll see what party. Maybe one we know about, maybe one we don't. We'll see who takes advantage of it because I think this is going to be a thing. I know in my lifetime, I have said I was independent. I know that when as a journalist, I said, you know, I have no preference. I decline to state because I want to be as objective as possible. But you could tell by what I say who I might be aligned with. Maybe I just try not to be blatant about it. Although when you do an opinion show, it's fairly obvious. So we'll see. All right. Like I said, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. We're here. Go to Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. Go to YouTube at Emil Amok 1. Facebook, facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media. We put up the recordings on AMOK.com. Regular listeners, viewers of this program know I like to meditate. So I'm going to meditate and I'm going to do nothing. Really, doing nothing is probably the best thing. The best thing. You're just there. You're just present. And with me, like I said, it always boils down to this loving kindness. And one thing I learned from people like Chris Garmer, this willing to be loved, to be, before you apply self-love, you have to have a kind of a transformation within that you are worthy of love. And that helps. I find that helps if you're feeling this sort of weird kind of self-doubt, And then I think also it's just coming out with a love kind of energy toward others, showing it. And, you'll see the true colors of people you're dealing with, of how they react. Usually even the bad people say, oh, here's a kind, loving person. We won't take advantage of this person yet. But usually what happens when you show a true, authentic, loving kindness toward others, they reciprocate. What do you know? And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Check out the replays. We'll repeat some things throughout. Till Monday. Next time. Mahal Gita.